Oh, today, or this second, or this very minute, or this very plonk second, whenever you're listening to this, you know what I mean. I'm going to be teaching you how to catch a cold. In other words, how to draw like an amateur. I taught myself how to draw, and I do it badly, so I'm going to teach you how to do it. Because, I'm decent, and I've never gone to an art class, and you know what? I don't want to really have to, so I just sort of taught myself to draw, because I didn't really think it would ever be a big passion of mine, so just sort of like, And so, I'm going to teach you how to draw by just I'm teaching this to you the same way I taught myself. Just like this. And it looks crap, and I know that. But, it's better than not being able to draw a straight line. So, in order to do drawing, in this case I'm doing it digitally, using a Wacom tablet Bamboo Splash. It's the smallest and cheapest of the Wacom tablets that are available from the Wacom website, and it's good. It's good. I like it. And I'm also using Photoshop CS5 to create the thing. So I'm gonna make a new image. We're just gonna go with 1280 by 720 because it's 16:9 ratio and it's nice. I've also got a cold, which is awful. So yeah. So when it comes to drawing, the first step is to know your colors. And in this case, since I'm working on the first panel of a web manga slash web comic called Dogma, and it's going to be in black and white, so I'm using black and white, in which case later we'll be using gray to add gray tones and stuff like that, and I'll explain that when we get there. So first step, go ahead and click the new layer button, select this, double click it, or double tap it with your pen, whatever, and just click OK. So for layer 1, what you want is to have this button selected if you have a tablet, in which case if you don't, I'm using the paintbrush tool, set your hardness to maximum and set your size really low. And what we're going to do is, this button is the pressure sensitivity, so if you're going light, pressure sensitivity is to brush size, so if you're going light it will do it small, if you're going hard it will do it big. I personally like that better than doing it opacity, because it just seems to work better when you do this. What is that? Oh, I don't know, whatever that is. I've never used that, so I'm not going to bother. I didn't need to. So for this, drawing straight lines is the hardest thing to do out of everything I do. So just, if you can't do that, don't worry. Nobody can. There's a trick to drawing straight lines that makes it so much easier, and when I figured out how to do this, I was like ecstatic, because I was like, I can draw a straight line and you can't, haha, you suck. And it eventually came back and bit me in the ass, because I'm still horrible compared to many other people when it comes to art. So but when it comes to drawing straight lines, let me zoom in a bit here, holding the Alt key and zooming in and out with the mouse wheel, to draw a straight line. Everyone can draw short straight lines like that. That's a straight line, that's a straight line, that's a straight line, that's a straight line. So you just sort of draw a bunch of consecutive straight lines and just sort of adjust to make sure you're still going in the same direction, and it works out, and it's essentially just sketching. And so for this panel, I want to be on a subway train, not on the sandwich restaurant. So I'm just sort of basically outlining some seats that you would find on there. Basically outlining the backs of the seats, getting bigger as they get closer to the camera, or the virtual camera, or your perspective, whatever you want to say. That's actually much too bad, so I'm going to just delete this entire layer. So, one thing I find horribly grueling about art is that you have to constantly be working around what you've done before or restarting all the time. Live with it, whatever. That's too steep a slope. What I want to do... Oops. Let me get some white going so I can just cover that up. A new layer. Like I said, I'm an amateur. Don't criticize me. So I want to be... Oh, that's too high still. I've got a very specific angle in mind when I see this. We've got our main protagonist sitting on a subway chair thinking with his hands folded in his lap, sitting next to someone. So, yeah, this is a good angle. I like this. We can certainly get the entire perspective of the person. So, we've got our basic chairs. Yay. Chairs. Number one thing in all art. Chairs. Feel like I'm gonna die, so I'm not intentionally sounding bored. And right now I'm just correcting this to make sure all the lines follow the same linear path, so bear with me as I work around my own mistakes, which is common. You're going to be seeing me do that a lot. One thing I like about artwork is I like to make my artwork feel dirty. I don't like to clean it up too much. It makes artwork feel raw and untainted to me. So we've got a sort of set of chairs. Next up is going to be the windows. I'm going to sketch those out. And possibly have a tunnel with lights along the side here. I don't want to make them too hard because they're going to be obscured by motion blur. So we can get a little bit of shine there. And some shine on this little curvature on the support of the tunnel there. And we're just going to do some basic shading to make sure we have an idea of what we want sort of written out here. Well, drawn out here. Sketched out. So, and now I'm going to darken these lines here to make sure I know that those are the lines I want to follow when I start outlining. And make the shine brighter here. Those aren't actual things, just ignore those for the moment. Those are just me putting placeholders. So there we go. There's a good set of windows. Most of these windows are actually going to be obscured by human heads, so I don't want to put too much detail into them later so that I have to erase too much of it. One thing I want to do is sort of clear up that these chairs are sort of embedded into the side, and there's going to be some emergency cording here, like they have often. On subways. So there's that. So next step is going to be to start sketching out the rest of the chair, which essentially is just mapping out some 3D geometry. simple 3D geometry. I don't want these to be like outstretched over anything. I want them to be solid because I want this to feel very cheap and dirty, like old time, first subways out there. Like grimy and, you're surrounded by sketchy people all the time. And this is also set in France. I just want to point that out. And France, I don't want to point anything out of France, but one thing that makes me always think of France is the French Revolution. And whenever I think of the French Revolution, I think dirty and grimy and vive la révolution. So I'm gonna try and capture that sort of grimy, very, what's the word, urban look. So sketch out some curvature lines. And already you can see that this is starting to turn out looking a little bit like what we want it to. So next step is to add people. And for this, I'm going to turn this here into bright blue by going up here, doing this, grabbing a nice bright that, turning that layer, linear dodge, add, and we've essentially created a really, 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 really annoyingly prevalent sort of surface there that we can work on and sketch around without getting confused as to where our lines are because they're different colors. So, as for the person, they've got a hood on. But it's obscuring more of their face than that, so it's gonna look a lot more like that. We've got some darkened areas down here. I'm not gonna really bother adding the face. I do want that to be a bit more of an angle though, because he's looking down in my head at his hands, thinking hard. So do this with that. There we go. That's looking better. So I'm gonna begin adding some details, such as the body shape. So we're gonna, oh, that's much too thin. Let's extend them out a bit. When it comes to drawing human figures, I like to just sort of wing it, because I find that winging it often leaves me with better results than when I try to think about what I'm doing. So I try to also feel it, like, is this a natural pose? Could I sit in this pose comfortably? Things like that. So, he's got sort of a hunched over look. His shoulders slope down. He's got, yeah, that's looking better. He's got his arms folded in his lap. And when it comes to drawing interlocked hands, as far as I can tell, whenever I've done it before, I just sort of, do a couple of lines like this. Get a thumb overneath, over top, not overneath. That's not a word. Sort of like that, and a thumb over here. So what we've ended up with is a very sort of rustic, sort of very dirty look to our sketch so far, and I'm going to add a bit of a zipper here. Not much, just one of those like semi-partial cheap sweatshirts. Whatever I just said, semi-partial cheap sweatshirts, ignore me. I'm sick. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna do some two-tone shading when it comes to this later. So next step was gonna be getting the face in here. One of my erased lines already sort of outlined a nose for me, so next step, I'm gonna outline this in black and sort of strengthen that this is going forward, and sort of add to the effect that he's looking down and thinking. So I got a t-shirt in there, and already this is turning out a lot better than I thought it would just from an initial sketch. So I'm gonna erase some of these lines, make it more clear where he is and what he's doing. He's sitting there with his hands folded, his neck showing some darkened areas. And as you can see, we're coming along quite nicely with the sketch. So what I can go ahead and do is hide that and... what I meant to say? I meant to grab that, not hide it. And we can start erasing some of the sketch lines that are inside his person, which are always weird because you don't often see through people. If I were drawing a transparency, then I would leave those, and I would sort of give him a shine, like a sort of white glow, because for some reason transparency means emanating light, which is stupid. So we're gonna go back up here, add some more clothes wrinkles to the hood. Possibly some right there. Some at the elbow pit area. Yeah, I said pit. Get over it. Yeah. What now? Badass totes. Big goats. So we've got a dude sitting there. Just add some things so he doesn't look like he's legless. And as you can see, now we've got a very humanoid-looking figure. Very obscured, very mysterious here. So next step is going to be to hide. Actually move this above that, so we've got that. And start sketching in a new layer for the woman who's sitting next to him. Okay, welcome back from that jump cut. As you can see, I've changed the perspective of the head so she's looking at our mysterious man here. I can go ahead and erase those perspective lines. Looking much more feminine and effeminate than our last attempt at a human, which failed. I would be a horrible god. Don't ever hire me. Heaven, if you're looking for jobs, Yahweh was way greater of a choice than me. I'm an atheist. That was a joke. So we're gonna get some collarbones here. For collarbones, let's just sort of do that. Yeah. So if we want to sort of show that this woman is a lot more cheerful, and, upbeat than our mysterious man over here, so we're gonna sort of bring a hand over possibly a newspaper, and I'll go ahead and sketch that in now. And she's sort of talking to this strange man, sort of asking him questions that he doesn't really want to answer right now, because he's got too much on his mind. So we're getting to a point now where I'm sort of starting to have to feel the artwork a lot more. So what I'm doing here is extending out the hand, the arm I mean, and then we're going to draw a basic 5 phalanges here that point out where the fingers are. I'll go into more detail with that once we start outlining. I've had to work on hands a lot because hands are the worst fucking thing that you can possibly try to draw. So, if we get sort of... I want to give off the impression that she's stylish and knows what she's doing. So she's very professional. She's got sort of a suit dress thing, but she's also got it to her taste. So we're gonna have sort of extended out, funneled. Sleeves, so that we can get a nice sort of... She's professional, but she's also not, boring. She's a very interesting person that you'd want to get to know and possibly become friends with, because she's just that kind of person. Very much like Lucy from Fairy Tale is a very likable person. She's obviously a bit more open with her body than this woman here. This woman is trying to make an effort not to show too much because she's very much on the sex is a outward representation of connection between two people sort of side of things, which I completely understand. Although personally, I accept sex as just a natural thing that happens when people are attracted to each other, and it doesn't necessarily have to mean that the two people are in love unless you're doing it unprotected, in which case you're an idiot if you're not planning on sticking with that person for the rest of a long time. Because, so we've sort of, I'm moving on from that because that's a talk for a different time. I've sort of underlined the bust here. It's not too big like most animes exaggerate, because, she's very much a modest person, so she's not trying to sex up all the people on the train. Not that kind of person. She's very cheerful and, outgoing. And I'm trying to put a little bit of a smile on her face there. Like she's trying to start up a conversation with this young man who's sitting next to her. Young, as in like, I assume this man here is roughly 22 to 27, I'd say, and she's roughly the same age. She's quite the collegiate woman, which is another reason she's so modest. She's always been that way and sort of values education a great deal. So I'm sort of outlining a nice hand here. It's not a nice hand. Just hands are nice. Once you get the hang of drawing hands, and you can, and you're like, oh my god, I never want to stop drawing hands, because it's just so cool. So we've got sort of her legs. This is a very short upper body I've done for her, so I'm gonna extend that down a little bit, and when it comes to artwork, you can do whatever you want with your person, because in this case, I'm making the upper body longer, which makes it look like she's leaning forward, or sitting farther forward in the chair. Actually do want to make this, instead of a dress, be a suit, because, as I said, she's very modest, a very modest person. So, we can sort of extend that greeting for her, whatever that meant. You know what I meant. I want this arm to be in her lap, though. She's in a very comfortable position. You know, she's not. I hope you can try and see what I'm trying to get at here, because I don't. So, possibly for this, I'm having a bit of trouble getting the like proportions quite right, so I'm gonna just extend that over there. I don't want the legs to bend like that. That's not how legs bend. They're not flexible in a sort of smooth logarithmic way. They're very linear separation of lines, you know, angular, you know, with the kneecap. You don't ever see a person with rubber legs. So when it comes to this, that's a bit to the right too far. I'm having trouble with this because I am an amateur artist. And, you know, I'm teaching you to be an amateur artist. You know, I will never claim to be professional at art, because I am not. I draw horrible compared to many people. So, if we do this, possibly... that's good. That's getting along what I need. So, when it comes to that and stuff, you know, trial and error is really your best bet, because there's no way to quickly master drawing, you know. So what I need to extend that elbow. That's freaking me out a little bit. She's very, very flexible, apparently, so I want to this shoulder is coming down. There we go. That's actually fixed a lot of the problems I was seeing with this. Right there. Just, you know, little things can sometimes change the entire effect of your artwork, and that's one thing I actually really love about art, because if you've made a mistake and it's just a tiny thing, then you can fix that and everything looks a lot better. Like I just did, and the shoulder doesn't seem so wide on this side. So rudimentary shading there, some there, some there, some on the inside. So that's actually looking very nice. I may end up going with this. This would probably be the second panel, if I'm totally honest with you, because in the first, this man is centered and is thinking, and you can sort of see a little bit of the side of this woman here. Well, I'm tempted to name Nora just because I saw the what was it? I'm getting Fairy Tale mixed up with finishing the first season of American Horror Story, which was fantastic, and I'm working on the second season now. Just throw that out there. But Nora actually seems like a good name for this woman here. And as for this man here, I will leave that to the reader of the comic. So, in terms of that, this is all pretty much done. Once I sort of erase this, wrong layer, erase these lines that are inside of her head, and inside of her legs, then we can begin to work on outlining this. So now we extend this even further up, and now we have our entire brightened image, which we can use to start sketching. Not sketching, outlining. So I'm going to select that, move it down to there, and add that into a group. Excuse me. So we've got this in group 1, which is just a way for me to easily not have too many layers cluttered on that little layer thing there. So now we're going to start outlining, and for outlines traditionally in anime, they're very thin. They are the largest I've seen, they're about 1 pixel out of the 4 or so when in a low pixel count. So what I'm doing here is, this outline is actually very thick, but the image is not actually large enough for me to do a very small outline. What I'm doing is sort of outlining over top of these, just his jacket. Oh, that was awful. Never do that. If there's one thing you should take away from that, it's to never do that. I can erase some of these. You want all your lines to meet up, or else it looks really, really weird. There. So, I believe now I'm going to fast forward or cut into a time when I have outlined a larger portion of this and can begin to show you how I shade and define geometry when it comes to two-tone shading or gray tone shading, which is also a very simple shading technique. And then perhaps at a later date I can show you different shading techniques that I use in actual pen and paper artwork or pencil and paper artwork. Physical objects in the physical world, sort of pushing on other physical objects in the physical world to create marks and call it art when it's not, because I'm awful at it. So we've gotten to a point where I'm about to start inking the hands. When it comes to hands, they are the worst. Especially because it's so hard to feel them when you're inking, especially in a position that's not as common as many others, such as this one. In this case, this is the thumb here, so we're going to be making that like that. You'll notice here that I'm making the fingers interact with the world that I sketched a lot more accurately than when I just sort of sketched them, so that it gives a more real feel in a, rather than when I'm just sort of screwing around by moving my pen around like an idiot. I can get and feel a little bit more at ease with what I'm doing. And what I'm doing here is ignoring one of the fingers, and this thumb is too long for the proportion of the hand that I did. And that's actually perfect. So you'll notice that she's sort of just resting her hand, and it looks like she's just resting her hand, and that's one of the hardest things to do. In fact, I'm surprised I got it right so quickly, and I'm sure that I've not got it right as a professional artist would tell me, but again, I'm not a professional artist. I am an amateur. As for this hand, what I want it is to be sort of spread out like heck, what do I want it to look like? Just sort of at rest, just open. Just sort of sitting there rather than like doing something. And so to get that, don't ask me how to do it, because I am awful at hands. In fact, I'm awful at most things when it comes to art, so don't. Really, you shouldn't believe a word I say in this video. This is just how to be an amateur like me. So, an art mature. Not art major, art mature. You'll notice that despite what I tried to do, this actually looks reversed, and that is unintentional. That is the left hand, so the thumb would be up above. So we're gonna have to extend this pinky out a little bit more, thin it down, bring this finger out, middle finger a little bit longer, and do that. Does that look better? A little bit, yeah. I'm fine with that, because I'm an amateur and I don't care. I do want to add a bit of a collar on this shirt, and some buttons, because buttons make everything better. And it just adds a lot more detail, I think. A lot more character to the, character. So we've got the sketch of the two people done. Now we just need to finish up the rest of the scene. Alright, so as you can see, we have gone through and added a lot of gray shading ish. We have two tones in there. Well, three. We have black, we have dark gray, and we have light gray. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a fourth tone, which is going to be darker, lighter gray. So it's going to be sort of a third of the way to the darker gray you see there from the lighter gray. So it's going to be a nice two-tone shading sort of thing we've got. So that's the grayish, so we're going to go to there. And that's going to be our two-tone shading color. And we can do that for any place we see fit that needs shading. So any clothing wrinkles, places like here. And what we're essentially doing is just saying, okay, here's where light isn't, because it's being blocked by those things. And we can add another layer here to add to that. So now we've got a sort of gradient on his face. And there's no light gonna be there. Along this side of his arm. Along here, there. Along this side of his arm. Under the collarbones, onto the side of that one, under the zipper here. And we've already added a lot of depth to this, but there's still quite a bit of spot here, which needs some shading to define geometry. So if I add a line there, and shade underneath it, we've got a better idea of what the geometry is of that hood. We can add some shading to the side of the hood to make it feel more three-dimensional. Of course, there's going to be shading under the arm, along the entire length of the arm, not just where the cleft of the shoulder is. And now we move on to her. We're going to be shading the sides of her hand, like so. And now we have a much more defined shape here. Let me add some shading here. Will be light blocked underneath this leg here. To the side of that one a little bit here. Oops, let me erase that because that looked a little bit too suggestive for my tastes. Okay. You're gonna see some shadow over here as the light being blocked by her body across the side of this shoulder here. Basically, my one point of advice when it comes to shading is, if you saw this in real life, where would light not be able to get to? And then, for two-tone shading, that works incredibly well. When you get to gradiential shading and photorealistic shading, it gets quite a bit more complicated. But as for two-tone shading and gray-tone shading, where the light will be is very, very effective. And for just becausies, I'm going to add a little streak of white across her hair, as is common in many anime hair people's things. There we go. And that is a completed panel. So, thank you.